I didn't expect to live to be as old as I am. I really expected to party myself to death and die with my hate. And believe me, I'm 58 years old. I'm still a renter. I have fucked up my life from here to East Jesus, Kansas with my hatred and hanging on to shit. I will
Yeah.
probably work till the day I die, because if I had planned on living this long, I would have planned a hell of a lot better. And now that I'm here in this moment, I'm so grateful for it. Now I feel like if I died tomorrow, that'd be just fine, because I feel like
Yeah.
I've resolved so much.
Hold on. I think I'm gonna need tissues. Your last interview really fucked me up, so I got the tissues ready to go. They're Lotion Plus, not a
Oh.
sponsor. Hey, what's up, guys? It's Ex Morgan with My Spiritual Life, and today I have my very awesome special guest, Mama Joe, back again because his interview fucked me up so hard that I needed to bring him back. So, backstory a little bit as I'm introducing you. If you didn't see my full length interview with Mama Joe, check it out in the link below. He talked about growing up as a Christian, evangelical, Pentecostal, gay, and dealing with all of that. Incredible, incredible story. And part of what made me want to do a second part of this interview was because of the discussion we had off camera after we finished the video, because you talked more in depth about your experience with forgiveness. So today we are going to have a more free-flowing kind of open discussion talking about forgiveness, sharing a little bit more of kind of tying some loose knots in your story. And I'm going to be talking about some experiences in my life with regards to forgiveness, as this is a very relevant thing I'm working through right now. So that is my intro. Thank you for coming back again.
And thank you for
I
having me.
I am so honored.
I could do this for hours a day with you. So I thoroughly enjoy your content. I enjoy you. I love you. And I respect you.
Oh boy. Good thing we got tissues. All right, here we go. Woo. Okay, so forgiveness, right? I want to talk a lot about it. There's a lot to say about it. I have so many thoughts. I want to hear you talk first. Let's talk a little bit about how you talked about going to forgive the church building. I want to
Okay.
hear more about that, and like, why did you felt the need to do it? How did it help you? Your thoughts on it? I want to hear about it. And for those who don't know, this is in reference to his full length interview. Maybe you can give a little backstory just so it makes sense.
Okay. Well, I wandered away from my church by just moving 2,000 miles. you know? And so I never really had a faith crisis until I came full circle and I returned to my hometown. I had one friend that was attending that church at that time. She's no longer there. I wanted to reconnect with her, so I drove past the church several times, and it just always kind of felt, like I just don't belong there. It's weird, But we made this plan. I was going to come to the service. We were going to go out to eat, reconnect, and so I pulled up, and I actually parked directly in front of the church, which is not where people normally park there because it's easier to go in through the side door. But I don't know. I got out and I thought a lot of my pain is just connected to this land, this conglomeration of buildings and the land. Um, and so I did. I literally looked at the building and kind of held my hands out like that, and I just said, I know as a pile of lumber, brick, and mortar, You had nothing to do with causing my pain, but you do house it. And for that, I forgive you. And that enabled me to be able to walk inside. I saw 2 or 3 other people that I knew. Um, and I was able to greet everybody in love. And I think one of the things about that particular forgiveness is that was so incredibly all encompassing that I don't have to forgive individuals anymore. I don't have to forgive any pastor or preacher who read these verses from the platform or said anything negative about it, because forgiving the building and the situation, um, it kind of brought me right back to a place of love for my people, because
Oh,
they are my people, you know. And in looking back over it in the last week, I thought, like my best friend is the daughter of the man who took over the church after the founder died. And I don't owe her dad any forgiveness. He only ever treated me with love. He was like a second father to me, and he taught me his truth. That would be kind of a ridiculous thing for me to be angry about. It does, his truth is different from mine, but he did what he thought was best.
wow.
And I can't find a way to be mad about that anymore.
Wow. I just feel like that's incredible, the amount of compassion you have. I think it's very wise, because it's so hard to not look at something like this that hurts you so much and to not just want to be like, basically fuck all of you, right? Like
Yeah.
like how dare you all do this to me? But you have so much compassion in your heart for realizing, and this was part of that discussion we had off camera last time after we finished our first interview, where you were like, they aren't doing it from this malicious place. They're doing it from a place of love,
Yeah.
and that's the best way that they know how to love you. And you mentioned that, like, if you can view it this way, where they were loving you the best way that they knew how, it can give you kind of that ability to forgive and let go and stop harboring so much resentment
To grab
towards
that
them.
love and hang on to it.
Yes, yes, because we shove that love when we get mad at someone, we don't forgive them. We also cut ourselves off from the love that person has to offer too. This
Exactly.
is this is fucking deep shit, bro.
And to be perfectly clear, I never had any ill thoughts about him in particular. I just used him
Right,
as an example. I would much rather honor the love the man showed me in his lifetime
right,
than
right.
to harp on the 4 or 5 times I heard him say these horrible things, you know.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's not like he's the one who made this up either,
Right, because
you
he was
know.
preaching it because it was preached to him, right,
Yeah,
and
and it's
it's not
preached in
to
every other church of that kind in the world.
right,
It's
right.
just a part of the belief.
It's like it's starting to view these people as, like, less of an enemy and almost like a little bit more of just, like, part part of the just the the problem of these bad ideas just continuing to be passed down instead
Yeah,
of viewing him as, like, malicious, right? Which is just
right.
so easy. It's so easy to fall into that, and so I have so many thoughts on this, and I'm so excited to talk about it because forgiveness has been such a big part of my journey, because there was a lot that I faced in my childhood that I didn't want to let go of,
Yeah,
that I genuinely
and
didn't want to move on from.
yeah,
And
and one thing you have to realize about yourself, it's a part of maturity. You can't get through life and not hurt somebody,
absolutely.
and you didn't mean to, you didn't know you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope they treat me with the same grace that I'm treating others, because I'm sure I've hurt
Absolutely.
somebody enough that they, want me dead. I don't know. But,
Sure. Sure.
I mean,
Oh,
I have
absolutely.
about 16 that I don't remember a lot of from the alcohol and drugs.
Right, right. No, absolutely. And it's that cliche, right? And it that just keeps sinking deeper into my soul of you forgive for you,
Yeah,
not for the other person. And
exactly.
it's such a cliche, but, like, it's something that is continually I'm in awe of because I realize, like, I was tortured enough as a kid. Why would I wanna keep torturing myself?
Yeah,
But you think, like, being mad at it is punishing those people that hurt you, but it's not,
it's not.
because they're not hurting as a result of you harboring that resentment, you are. You also mentioned about having that compassion, right? Because you have hurt people, and
Right.
realizing that, like you said, comes this wisdom of, "Oh, these people who have hurt me, maybe it was unintentional because I have also hurt people unintentionally." And I think that's what really propelled me on this forgiveness journey, was because I was starting to realize, that there was a lot of mistakes that I was making with,
Yeah.
friendships, with my marriage, like, with my kids, like, and there was so much shame coming out of that as I was looking at my life and seeing, like, mistakes I was making more clearly as I was, like, getting more therapy and understanding, what healthy relationships were supposed to look like. And it was such a shock to my system. And I was so used to categorizing people by they're either good because they did good things, or they're bad because they did bad things, and hurting people is a bad thing. And so I had all this hatred for myself that I didn't know what to do with. And so it took getting to this place of compassion where I could say to myself, like, at least I could say to myself, I didn't mean to. I didn't
Yeah.
mean to cause this hurt. And
Yeah.
so what I noticed with that was then, well, if I got to say that about myself, I got to say that about other people too.
Right.
Because maybe these people didn't mean to cause hurt. So it's been exhausting.
Yeah. Well,
Just processing all of
and
this.
I know my mother didn't take me to an exorcist to traumatize me.
Right,
She
right.
thought she was curing me. She was doing the most loving thing she knew to do in the moment.
Oh my gosh. It
And as awful as it was, and as much as I hated her for years,
Yeah, yeah.
she didn't do it to traumatize me.
Jesus, Joe, you're gonna fuck me up again. I gotta say, this is so powerful to me. It is really hitting my soul so deep. And I know I already told you this off camera, but I'm gonna say it again so everyone else can hear it. When we got done with our interview last time, I asked you about forgiveness because you talked about forgiving the building, and then you went in a little more in depth, and I'll have you share that again about forgiving your mom, forgiving your dad, and maybe we can get to that next. But when you talked about those things, it really sunk deep into my soul. It was like, if you could make peace with your past that was incredibly traumatic, then I could make peace with mine. And
Yeah.
so I just felt very inspired by you sharing that, and I felt like, I have a lot of, admiration for the way you can talk so compassionately about your mom and about your preachers and things like that. So that being said, if you want to share what you had shared with me before about, that journey of trying to learn to forgive your parents, let's do it.
Okay. I don't really know where to start, but I'll go to mom. I lived out west for a long time. I would fly home, and they didn't live here anymore. They moved up into South Central Arkansas when they
Gotcha.
retired. So when I say home, I think a boy always thinks home is where mommy is. You
Of
know,
course, of
so
course.
even
Right.
though I never lived in that house, that was home at that time.
Absolutely.
She had Alzheimer's, and it was very slow progressing with her. We started noticing subtle changes in her, and and my sister lived there and took care of her and dad, and she stayed home as long as it could be handled. But it did come to a point that she had to be institutionalized.
Wow.
And a couple of years after she was in the nursing home, my father died. And then I moved back to the South and actually lived in the house with my sister for about 6 months. I started working in Hot Springs, Arkansas, which was about 50 miles away. I have my mom's Bible, but that was the one thing of hers that I really wanted was her Bible. And and because there's these little treasures in this Bible, because she was a singer that couldn't remember her words, so she would jot down the lyrics to songs that she was going to sing, and they're in this Bible, you know. And if she was called on to do a, because especially at the church I grew up in, if she was called on to just sing a solo without the choir backing her, just her singing,
Right.
that pastor said, you get in the pulpit because you're a minister.
Right.
You know,
Right.
when you're singing with the choir, you belong over there, but when you're singing alone, you belong right up here.
Right. Right.
And so mom would have these in her Bible, and she'd just take her Bible to the pulpit like she's a preacher and open it up to the words of the song, you know.
Oh my gosh.
And I don't know if I ever mentioned it before, but I'm apparently the spitting image of her father, of my
Wow.
mom's dad. None of us knew him. He died when she was 9.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
but
That is
but
young.
she continued to have a sparkle in her eye when I would come in the room anyway, and I always, you know, I thought she recognized me, and then for a while towards the end I thought she's recognizing me as her dad, you know.
Oh.
But
Oh, wow.
since I lived so close, um I mean every Saturday or Sunday I would drive to that nursing home with her Bible, and I would read to her the verses of the New Testament that she had highlighted or underlined. And she might write in the margins, you know,
Right.
what preacher was speaking on that. You know, and I was just anything to try to get some kind of a recognition reaction from her.
Right.
And
Right.
I realized, you know, probably 3 or 4 months into doing it that I didn't hate her anymore. You know, that what I thought I was doing for her because I need to be a good son and do something for her actually turned into something I had done for me
Oh my
because I
gosh.
had forgiven her for everything. And she died knowing that her baby loved her. And gosh. Sorry.
Oh, don't be sorry. I'm just holding back. Yep. Um, uh, when you have the composure to answer, how did you get to that point? Like your mom who put you through so many difficult things, unintentionally. How do you get to a point where you could read to her from the thing that hurt you so much, which was the Bible, you know? That's that's crazy. That's
and
incredible.
well, I felt like I needed to go to the nursing home because she couldn't speak up for herself.
Right.
And, you know, I would go into her room and I would go down to that nurse's station. I would say, my mom's dirty. Why is she dirty? You need to get an aide
Right.
down there and get her cleaned up. and
Right.
you need to keep her that way because you never know what time of day I'm showing up.
Yes, for sure. Right.
And so that was what started it. And when I lived in the house with my sister, I would go, almost every day because it was 11 miles. Uh, but like I say, her Bible was something that I wanted, and I'd never looked in it. I just it almost looks like a purse. It's in a Bible case, and it's got a handle on it,
Right,
so it
right.
kind of looks like a purse. And if you saw my mom, you saw this Bible purse thing. It was always with
Right.
her. And I had made our church recorded. We made three or four albums because that's how good our choir was. And I made a CD. I ripped the songs, or however you call that, but back in the old days when you could get something off of
Right,
onto a
right.
CD like that. All the ones where she took the lead on,
Oh,
and they actually played it in the day room in that wing of the nursing home because it calmed all the Alzheimer's patients down. you know People could be kind of rowdy, and you put on this lady singing a beautiful gospel song, and they'd sit down and listen you know
oh, wow.
and
Yes.
so I took the Bible with me when I took the CD in. I brought that Bible with me. And the I made friends with the head nurse down there. Her name was Lisa. I don't recall her last name either. But she said, if you want to go in a room and have a Bible study with her, maybe she can, maybe that'll spark something in her. And I thought,
Yeah.
well, I'm not the one to lead a Bible study.
Oh my gosh.
But she already had an aide say, go down there and open room, blah, blah, blah. And
Yeah.
so I went in and I thought, well, I can just read. I can thumb through here and read. And I decided I would only read the New Testament because it's the Old Testament that really fucks me up so bad.
Right, right. Of course.
There's so much in there that is so wicked
Yeah.
in the name of God.
Yes.
That
Yeah, yeah.
so I just started in Matthew, and I thought I'll just read the ones she underlined. And I would say,
Yeah.
do you
Right,
remember when
right.
Brother Beatty was speaking about that? Or
Oh, I
whatever name was in the
see, I
margin,
see.
just trying to get
Oh.
some connection with her. And sometimes she'd just light up, you know, and
Oh.
those moments were precious, because my brother
Yeah.
and sister did not get that from her.
Oh,
When
that's
they would go
hard.
see her, she just ignored them, you know,
Oh, that's
or
so hard.
Or she would say something terrible, like look you in the eye and say, "You're a shit ass," or something like that. Just you never
I,
knew.
um I can't even imagine, like, dealing with a parent with that, like, that must be so heartbreaking.
And at first, like I did it that once, and it may be a southern guilt thing, maybe, but I kind of felt like I needed to keep doing that in order to keep up appearances at the nursing home. Like if I
Right,
don't keep
right.
doing that, then Lisa's going to think I'm a terrible person. you know
Right, right. No, there's
but
that big fear of, like,
yeah,
yeah, people judging us. Yeah.
but like I say, like by the sixth or eighth time that I'm in there reading to her on a Saturday or Sunday, I remember wheeling her back to her bed and helping her in bed and kissing her on the forehead and telling her I love her.
Oh,
And I got in the car and I'm like, holy shit, you've forgiven this woman. You're treating her with love and compassion. And she
wow.
knows it. You can see it in her eyes. Every now and then sometimes she's just there, but every now and then she's like, and just so
Yeah.
pleased. And
Oh my gosh.
it's not like it's not like I set out to forgive her. I just felt like if I know when I was a baby, she protected me. If I was dirty, she cleaned me,
Yeah.
you know, and so it didn't matter when I started going so much, it didn't matter that I had some anger with her because she would have done the same for me and I owed it to her.
Yeah.
And one time I went. We need some comic relief now, okay?
Oh god, yeah.
One time
Oh,
I walked down there and I could smell it, and I walked back to that
yeah.
nurse's station. I was like, my mother is dirty, and my mother is dirty every single time I walk in this building. And the
Yeah.
head nurse had the gall to say to me, and well, you usually seem to wind up here about an hour after lunch, so that makes sense that she would have a
Mm.
bowel movement an hour after lunch. And I said, well, then I suggest you send somebody to my mom's room and have them smell her ass an hour after lunch.
Oh my gosh.
but but that's like I say, that's what she would have done for me, and that's how it started. It was just an obligation. This is what a boy does for his mom,
Yeah.
no matter
Yeah.
how she raised him, you know.
Wow.
And it turned into
Oh
something that I
man.
didn't expect it to turn into. And that was really my first step in forgiving the entire situation.
Wow.
Because if I can forgive her, I can forgive anybody.
That's what I was thinking. And you know what I was thinking is like, if we can forgive our parents or anyone else that, took care of us that maybe there was trauma around. I mean, if we can, or even people that really, really hurt us as kids, if we can forgive them, we really can forgive anyone. And more importantly, if we can forgive them, we can forgive ourselves.
Yeah,
And that's and okay, so I've been on a forgiveness journey for a long time, right? And forgiving someone is really hard. It is so, so hard, especially if there was something really, hurtful that they did to you. But it is nothing compared to trying to forgive yourself. It is
yeah,
way harder. It's way
yeah,
harder. And so like it's so beautiful to me to hear you talk about all of this because I think for a long time I just felt justified in being angry, and I was
yeah.
justified in
Oh,
being
yeah.
angry,
Yes, you were.
absolutely, but I just couldn't get to a place of acceptance, right? You have those
Yeah,
different stages of grief, and I realized in some way that's what I was going through. I didn't wanna leave anger because it hurts to feel sad, you know? It hurts
yeah,
to feel sad, like, that those people who you wanted to be there for you couldn't be there for you in the way that you felt like you needed. That is so
yeah,
sad. It's very devastating. It feels much easier to stay in anger because it's so, like, empowering.
yeah,
But then, like, I also just, I think I didn't wanna let go of the story, you know? Like, I didn't
yeah,
know who I was, and I think there was this part of me that's like, I don't know who I am, but, like, I know I'm this all this mess, you know?
yeah,
And I identified with it a lot, and it felt like it gave me I mean, it gave me, like, something to talk about with people and something to connect to people on, like, but also I don't know, it gave me some kind of, like, way to validate myself, like, "Oh, yeah, like, I've had
yeah.
such a hard life," and all that, and because I didn't know how to validate myself, I think, in, like, a healthy way, but at the same time,
And
it
you
was
it's also kind of deflective in a way, like, I've had such a fucked up life. If I do something fucked up, it's because of my mom,
right.
you know?
Oh my god, and it's so, like, Yes, it is. It's like it's in a way it's a defense mechanism. It's an excuse, right?
Yeah,
Um and I've heard it say that like you can't, you can't control what things, what bad things happen to you as a child, but what you can control is getting help, right? And getting better and not perpetuating out that hurt, right? Because it's so easy
yeah.
when you're hurt to go around and hurt other people.
Oh,
But
yeah,
it's not okay. And to finish that thought I was going to say was just, but I've learned over these years of in this journey of forgiveness, how much better I feel when I let go of that story and I accept it. Because here's the problem. Like I would tell myself often, I was like, how awesome my life would be if I had been raised in a different situation so that these things that happened didn't happen, like, and how great it would have been if like this other person could have been there for me or whatever. And then I
yeah,
think to myself, okay, let's say that I was born into a different family, right? And raised by a different
yeah,
family and I didn't have all those experiences. Well, that person over there, that's not me. That's
exactly.
someone else. That's not
Yeah,
even me. And so it was kind of this shocking awareness of like, okay, I'm sitting here complaining about what I had been given, right? Because of the
yeah,
trouble that came with it. But ultimately, I think what led me to acceptance was to say, I didn't have a choice. Like I
yeah,
can't sit here and fantasize like, oh, how great it would have been if I had been born someone else, because that's just not an option. And that wouldn't be me if it was. I'm here. I
yeah,
exist because these were my parents. This is where I was born. And these are the things that happened to me. And I
yeah,
think taking that ownership led to a lot of forgiveness around all of it and a lot of
yeah,
acceptance. And I felt so much more peace. And I let go so much more of that story of like, look at all these bad things that have happened to me. Instead, I feel like I show up more as me, presenting myself as someone who's interested in the things that I'm interested in and talking about things I'm interested in talking about, instead of parading around all of this hurt, and like narrating my life through this lens of like what an awful situation I had growing up. Does that make sense?
yeah, yeah. And I have a question for you.
Oh boy.
How do you like the Morgan you are today?
Oh my god, that's such a good question. Oh my god, I have so much more love and respect and even admiration for the person that I am today.
And you wouldn't be that
Because
person if it weren't for everything that happened before today.
I know. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I honestly, I find it so beautiful because the other day after we talked, and I was thinking so much more about forgiveness. It's been on my mind, I've been working on forgiveness for years. It takes years,
Oh,
it takes
yeah,
a
yeah,
long time. And after we were talking, I was doing that thing that you had done with where you went to the church and you like forgave it. I was doing that in my mind. I was like saying to different people in my mind, like, I forgive you. And not that I would do that in person because that's like weird. Um,
yeah,
I mean, I'm sure maybe there's situations where that would be like acceptable, but like I'm forgiving for me. So I imagined myself forgiving these different people. And I could feel like these chains coming off, and it was like I was crying and it felt good. And I think it's hard to get to that point. It's so hard because you have to process all the hurt and all the anger before you can get to that point. And it's so hard to
yeah,
process that shit cuz it just hurts. It hurts to look at it, it hurts to think about it. But I have worked on it a lot. So I felt like I could feel those chains kind of coming off. And in this, I experience my feelings and metaphors a lot. And
yeah,
as I was imagining, say, I forgive you, it's like I could see these chains coming off of me, They weren't attached to the person. Like it
yeah.
didn't change anything about
They were
them.
weighing you
They were
down.
just on me. And
Yeah,
I'm like, trying to forgive these people and just kind of letting it go. And then I like in my mind, I could see like past versions of me coming up, it like for the
Yeah.
forgiveness, and I was like, oh shit, I was like, and I'm like, okay, here we go. I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. And I could hear this conversation with myself of like how could you forgive me? Like I've done so many things wrong, like how could you forgive me? It just doesn't make sense. And
Yeah.
I could sit there to myself and I could say, because I have compassion for you, because I know you weren't trying to hurt people,
Yeah.
and I know that you were hurting, and that's what led to the hurt, and that's why I can forgive you. And it was just so powerful. And I
Yeah.
feel like I walk away from every forgiveness experience feeling more compassionate for myself and more free, just more
Yeah.
free to be less afraid of what people think of me and more confident and like more trusting of myself to just express myself freely, to have fun, to put myself out there and not be so afraid of what comes of it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really glad I got these tissues. Never gonna do a video with you without tissues ever again.
and there's there's a couple of people in my life that are forgiven, but I will avoid at all cost,
Oh, tell me about that. That is such an important part of this.
because there's some people who can't help but be antagonistic.
Yeah.
And no matter how much you forgive them, they're going to get you again.
Yeah.
And that is bringing me back around to the story of honoring thy father and thy mother.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Yeah, we talked
that
about that. Yeah.
that was for friends that I made like in California and Washington, Missouri. Um, they would ask me sometimes, how do you wrap your, because they would know the story of how my mom raised me, and they would say, so how do you wrap your mind around honor thy father and thy mother? And I said, well, I can honor a rattlesnake by staying out of its territory. So I don't see honor as like a worshipful thing. I'm just,
Yeah.
you have the ability to hurt me, and I'm honoring that you have this ability by staying away from you.
Right, right. I think it's such an important part of the journey because I realized several months ago as I was kind of meditating on all of this, and I was like, I don't want to forgive certain people in my life,
Oh
and I
yeah,
can feel
yeah,
myself not wanting to forgive them. And I was like, why? I was trying to think about it. I was like, why do I not want to forgive them? And what hit me was that I don't want to have a relationship with these people.
yeah,
And that was a really powerful awareness for me because we really associate forgiveness with making amends with people.
yeah,
And that
yeah,
can happen. And that can be a beautiful thing. But
yeah.
sometimes you forgive someone and you also never talk to them again.
You have, yeah,
So for me, what really helped me was to separate myself and to say, like, I'm going to focus on forgiveness so I can let go of all this weight I'm carrying, of all this shame I'm carrying, of all this resentment I'm carrying. And I'm going to take the relationship out of it in my mind. And that's going to be a separate thing. And down the road, I can decide if I want a relationship with this person, but
yeah,
I don't have to. And so
right,
I kind of made this promise to myself of like, okay, let's work on forgiveness while also keeping myself safe by saying, I'm not going to put you in this situation where you could get hurt again. And I think that really helped me to feel safe enough to let go on another level.
yeah. My dad always said hatred doesn't hurt the hated.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And I kind of glossed over my dad in the first interview, but I do remember telling you that my mom told him hands off. That
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
kid's mine. And
Yeah.
So I didn't get to know my dad until I was in my 30s and living out west, and I learned that he's a really freaking awesome guy,
Oh, wow.
He's somebody I wish could be.
Wow.
And the last thing he said to me, I was visiting at the house with him and my sister. My mom's over in the nursing home. I'm flying home the next day. And my dad kind of punches me in the arm and he says, I should have never let your mother keep you away from me. And I said, Dad, we're not going to have this conversation. And he said, oh, yes, we are.
Oh,
Because I need to have this conversation. You need to know I shouldn't have done that. I should have never let the love I have for your mother come between the love I should have for my son.
wow.
And I flew home I was living in Seattle at the time. I flew home and literally landed, got home, called the house to let my sister know that I had made it home and I was, made it home safe. Good to see y'all. Love, love, love. And she
Yeah.
said, Dad's in the hospital. Mark's on his way. Um, he's probably not going to make it through the night.
Oh,
So literally the last thing that man did for me was
oh,
ask me to forgive him,
oh,
you know?
wow.
And uh, so I literally got on the computer and booked another flight and flew back home again the next day. Um,
Wow.
but it's just I didn't expect that when because there were two chairs next to each other, and so when he punched me, he just like went like that, like my arm sitting there, and he's like, "Hey, I got to tell you something," and that happened, multiple times a day. But that's
Yeah.
certainly not what I expected to come out of his mouth, you know.
Wow.
But it was super healing to 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 know that in his last hours, at least, he recognized that
Wow.
he had allowed her to do me wrong.
Wow. That must have felt so cool, like, so bittersweet, you know?
Yeah,
Like, but
yeah,
it must have felt so cool to feel like he was in the end there he f he wanted he wished he had done better for you, and I feel
yeah,
like that is so powerful for him to be able to admit that. That takes
yeah,
a lot of humility to be able to
yeah,
admit that.
absolutely.
Wow. So tell me, how do you feel like all of this forgiveness of, like, your parents and the church and things, like, how has that, like, changed you and changed the way that you live your life?
I'm just a more authentic person. Um, I think I said this in the last interview, but forgiveness is really essential. It's you can choose to forgive or not to forgive, but if you choose not to forgive, you're choosing to not do something that is essential for your mental health.
Man. Yes.
So you're making a decision against you if you decide to hang on to the pain.
God, that's such a cool way of looking at it. Like, it again, just pointing it back to that acceptance is for you. And it's
Yeah,
so empowering getting to that point because I think what happens when we accept these things and not accept as in it's okay, I'm or even say I'm happy that happened or whatever, but instead accept it as in like you process the anger and the pain and the sadness and then you let it go, as in, like, okay, this is what happened and I can't change it, then I think what happens is you take all that energy you spent being mad and you convert it over to improving your life,
Right.
because you only have so much energy. Some of it's going to be expended um in unideal ways, and in
Yeah.
harboring resentment, that's one of those ways. And I don't mean to make it sound oversimplified, because again, forgiveness is a journey. I think it takes
Yeah.
years and years in many cases, and I also don't want to like overstate this, like, oh, if all these terrible things have happened to you, just forgive, you know. I don't want it to come across as like belittling anyone's experience, but I'm
Yeah.
just seeing a lot of power in it. I'm seeing a lot of beauty in it. I'm seeing, and like you said, it's vital to your own mental health. It seems
Yeah.
to me that it seems to be um that's just the reality of it, you know?
Yeah. I have two girlfriends that I've known through my life that had mothers that make mine look like Minnie Mouse.
Wow.
And
Wow.
neither one has ever been able to let go of their anger to
Yeah.
their mothers. One of them is now dead. The other one I honor as the snake she is. You
Right,
know?
right.
I loved her for 30 years. I can't have her in my life anymore. But both of these girls have lived their whole lives completely dependent on that mother they hate so much.
Yes.
One of them, I only knew her to have maybe 5 years of her life that she did not live in her mama's home.
Wow.
Not her mama living with
Right.
her living in her mama's home.
Wow.
And my other friend, her dad was a doctor, you know, so she doesn't live with her mother, but like her mother has bought her home.
Yeah.
You know, she would have nothing if it weren't for this mother that she hates so much.
I
And she
see.
has
I
to
see.
deal with this mother that she hates so much because she hasn't grown
Yeah.
into a person that can take care of herself because she's hanging on to this for no
Yes.
reason. And
Almost like,
I've told them both, you
yeah.
know, that the best thing I ever did for Joe was take that Bible into the nursing home
God, that's
and forgive my
oof.
mother.
Oh my god.
So all
Wow.
of all your hatred and hanging on to stuff is just stunting your spiritual and emotional growth.
Yes. Your own personal growth. I think it's true. I think we can't be in a place of empowerment when we're so fixated on what how other people have wronged us. And there's a time and place for that, right? You have to process it. You can't skip over it, I
Yeah,
don't think. I not that I can tell. But you have to get, when you can get to that place of acceptance, I think what's amazing is you stop saying, "Look at all these ways I've been wronged," and you start saying, what can I do to make my life better? And you
yeah,
take that power back in your life. You
yeah,
take it away from those people that you were allowing to continue to victimize you, you know?
yeah,
Because once I was out of my parents' house, they weren't in charge of me anymore, but I was letting them run the show still in my
yeah.
mind. And so I think you're right.
Both of these mothers that I'm talking about were never anything but kind, gracious, and loving to me.
Right.
I never saw any
Yeah.
of the abuse these girls complained about. But I always felt like I had to believe them because who would believe that of my mom?
I see. I
You
see.
know, so
Right.
I'm not going to doubt you just because I've never seen it.
Yeah.
You know, I do have one other friend who had a very bad experience with her mother, and she honors her like the snake that she thinks she is.
Yeah.
You know, and I do not doubt her at all. but her mother was never anything but kind, gracious, and loving to me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's hard for me to imagine any of these three older women behaving the way their daughters told me they did,
Yeah.
but I have to believe them.
Yeah.
I have to.
Wow. This has been so special.
It has. I forget one of the things, and I'm glad we're still recording, but one of the things I do, I told you about the Bible having lyrics of songs in it.
Yes. Yes.
And every now and then, if I'm going through there, I'll see a song and it will remind me of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I just put it in a frame and mail it to them with a little letter of how much they meant to me. And
Oh,
that, when our generation dies, nobody's going to have any memory of these songs.
I see. I see.
So why, instead of me hanging on to them, let me share this one that reminded me of you with you.
Yes.
I have one sitting on top of my TV right now, that I know
Oh.
who that one's going to.
Oh, that's so
And
special.
they're people that I might not have seen in 20 or 30 years, but I can, if I know where
Yeah.
they live, I can Google and find an address and just send it on.
Oh, that is
And
so nice.
that's part of that's part of my continuing to forgive my mother, because
Yes.
they
Yes.
remember her in a completely different way than I do.
Yes.
And so I'm going to send you this song and remind you of the wonderful woman she was to you.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful.
So that's like an ongoing forgiveness of mom, to find
Damn.
those things and say, I need to share that with so and so, because I
That
remember how
is
much that person loved my mom.
I think that's so beautiful, like, cultivating that love and admiration for, like, the good qualities someone has. Like,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah.
Like, to be said about them, that people can remember the good that they had to
Yeah.
offer. Like, that's so, so beautiful.
And as much abuse as I endured with my mom, she was also my greatest protector.
Yes.
You didn't fuck with Marcel's son, you know?
Oh, right, right.
When I was a sophomore in high school, I switched. I went from the private school and just insisted that I go to the public school
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
actually closer to my house than the private school was.
yeah.
And I can't hardly recall what I had done, but I got called to the vice principal's office, and whatever he wanted me to do, my answer was no. I'm simply not going to accommodate you on that.
Right, right.
Receiver and was like, "Well, we'll just call your mother, and find out how she feels about this." And I very politely reached over and just put my hand on his and put the phone back in its cradle, and I said, "With all due respect, may I suggest that you call Mr. Owens down at Trinity Heights Academy and find out what a bitch my mother is when you disturb her in the middle of the day."
Oh my
And
gosh!
I just turned around and went back to class. I didn't even wait for an answer.
Oh my
And
gosh!
and I never heard anything about it. You know? I was never called to the principal's office again, and my mother never said anything to me about it when I got home.
Oh
And
my
the
gosh.
Mustang would have been gone and the belt would have come out if she heard I had called her a bitch, you know?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
But that's how much she protected me.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
did she if anybody's gonna hurt this kid, it's gonna be me, you know?
That's true, that's
And
true.
and and one thing I would like to say to all the girls I've known in all of my life,
Mhm.
because they were my first friends,
Yes.
and they were my first protectors.
Yes.
And I love you so much for always
Oh,
seeing me for who I am.
that was so perfect. It was so beautiful that I heard Sadie Mae just meow right at the end.
Yeah,
She was like, "Yes."
yes, I'm one of those girls, you know?
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, that is so precious. That is so beautiful. Man, forgiveness is just it's such a hard thing, and I think one of the things that makes it really hard is we are very vengeful,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
humans, and we want justice.
yes,
We want recompense, like, when and I'm grateful that we have a country where justice is a thing, right? People get
yeah,
arrested when they do something wrong, and when they're proven guilty, they get punished, and, um, I'm grateful for that, because it keeps us safe. In an emotional perspective, um, emotional justice is doesn't really exist, you
yeah,
know? Because here's the problem is like, okay, someone's hurt you and you wanna hurt them back to punish them. The
yeah,
the problem with that is that, sometimes they didn't intentionally hurt you, right?
yeah,
But also sometimes, they just can't see it. They absolutely cannot see it. And and then I think when they can't see it, it can make forgiveness even harder.
yeah,
Because I do think in some cases it's way easier to forgive when someone is changing and they're
yeah,
becoming different. And you're like, wow, I want to like I have it in my heart to forgive this person because I can see them changing and I'm proud of that and I want to reward that.
yeah,
It's harder to let go and to forgive someone when they're still like living in their little delusion that,
yeah,
they didn't do anything wrong,
yeah,
um and so it kind of this twofold aspect of like we want to punish people for
mhm,
mistakes they've made and also we want we want them to earn it. And so if they
right,
don't earn it, if they don't change, if they don't apologize, we don't wanna give it. And that's
yeah,
why I think it's, again, so important to
and
view it as something with yourself and not with them.
forgiveness doesn't require an apology.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
And on top of that too, it also doesn't require you letting them treat you badly, right? I
No,
think
no,
part
exactly.
of the crutch to forgiveness is people hurt us, right? Part of that is our fault sometimes, I'll say sometimes at least, because
Yeah,
sometimes we're letting them hurt us by
yeah, yeah,
allowing them to treat us badly or allowing them to abuse us. And sometimes we feel the need to do that because we feel guilty or whatever, what have you. Um, we have to forgive ourselves. We have to learn to do better. We have to learn to take better care of ourselves so that people can't um, cause all these issues you know, for us in the future because you can forgive someone and then still not allow them to treat you badly. To say, here's my boundaries, and if you step over them, we're done. Like
yeah,
I'm not going to be allowing you to treat me in this kind of way. And I think that's an important part of forgiveness as far as like if you're trying to reconcile relationships.
yeah,
You if these people aren't going to treat you right, you have to get away from them for
yeah,
your best good. Yeah.
absolutely.
I think another block to forgiveness is I kind of mentioned it a little bit, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about it, is the black and white thinking of
Yeah,
there's good people in the world and there's evil people in the world. And good people do good things and evil people do evil things.
yeah,
Because what has hit me really strong over these last couple years on this journey is that I'm someone who's done a lot of good things in my life and done a lot of bad things.
yeah,
And, it's not so simple as I'm a bad person because I've done some things that have hurt people, right?
Yeah.
And it's the same for other people. It's very rare that you have someone who's waking up that morning and cackling evilly to themselves, thinking like, how can they cause the most pain that day to the people around them, right?
Yeah.
But I think as a child, I started to really internalize that some people are just bad people. And I do think that, it's possible that, those kind of people exist. But I think it's most people are not that simple. Most people are very complicated, and they're a mixture of a lot of good and a lot of bad. And
Yeah.
a lot of the bad is all coming from a place of hurt. It's all coming from really bad things that they learned, really bad things that happened to them, that
Mm.
that whole thing. And so I think trying to break out of that lens of black and white thinking has been very helpful for me, because I've been able to forgive myself better and say like, hey, just because I make a mistake doesn't mean I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
And then it allows me to forgive other people better by reminding myself like, hey, like just because this person is this way doesn't mean they're a bad person. It means that like these are, some things you need to look out for and make sure that like this shit doesn't get all mixed up in your shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think trying to break out of that black and white thinking and see it as more complicated has given me a lot more power to forgive, I think, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am tired.
I am too.
It's
But
been
I'm gonna give you a suggestion though. If you decide to do your little sign off bit, don't hit the record button. Just let it go until we stop talking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I learned my lesson last time. I was like, "Oh, no, our conversation was so good after we finished that video." Very good tip, very good tip.
Yeah.
You are very clippable. You're just
Yeah.
very good at explaining things. And I'd never heard someone explain cutting before in the way that you did. Like, you gotta point to something that it
Yeah.
makes you feel better to say, "This is why
Yeah.
I hurt." That was
It, it's
so
it,
cool.
and it's almost like the pain of your emotional hurt just comes out in your blood, and you're not
Yes.
experiencing the emotional pain
Yes.
in
Yeah.
that moment. And
That was so,
and
so
and you
powerful.
know, when I talked about cutting my wrist, it was not if the neighbor had not knocked on the door when he did, it would
Yeah.
have been a deadly cut.
That was the impression I got, yeah, in the way
But
that you shared it.
if you see the scar, it's like it doesn't go across the vein, it doesn't go down the vein. It's like kind of in the middle of the vein to the outside.
I see,
So
I see.
it wasn't a great cut, for the purposes I had in mind.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was able to bandage it up.
Yes,
It's
that's
not like I
good.
went to a hospital or anything. I was able to bandage it up and put on a long sleeve shirt and answer the door to this neighbor.
Yes, yes, I see.
And he had come over because I was refusing to answer the phone. My sister was in the
Oh,
hospital all the time. I mean, she would spend, 40 to 60 days in the hospital at a time.
yeah, yeah.
And I would come home and the phone would ring at 2:30 and it was always horrible news.
Mm,
And that day I decided I'm not answering the phone anymore. I will never answer the phone
oh,
again.
wow, wow.
And I still don't like to talk on the phone. There's a few
Oh,
people
I
I will
see.
talk to, my sister, my aunt, but anybody else, I have one really good friend that we will talk for hours as well. But anybody else, if you need my attention, text me. I'll text you
Yeah,
back. If
yeah.
we text more than 3 or 4 times, I might call you and say, "Okay, hurry up, let's get this done. I'm tired of typing."
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
But I had refused to answer the phone, so she called the neighbor and said somebody needs to go check on Joe.
Wow.
And he just arrived at the absolute perfect time. I was sitting in a hot tub of water. I was ready.
Yeah, wow.
And knock, 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 just and he not only did he knock, he was knocking on the bathroom window in the bathroom I was in,
Oh, wow.
you know, and he said he had knocked on other doors, but I didn't hear him. But when nobody came to the back door that he had knocked on, he just started going around banging on windows.
Oh, really?
And
Wow.
I was actually able to talk to him about that before he passed away. I was here visiting from
No
Seattle.
way.
I was here visiting from Seattle, and I went over to visit with him and well, I went over there for his wife invited me over. One of her daughters was in town. The other two lived in town. Let's get together
Yeah.
and just have a little reunion, And when he got there, I said, I want to talk to you about a particular day,
Oh, wow.
and told him what had happened. And he said, your mom called and said Joe won't answer the phone. And he said, I looked out over the kitchen sink to your house, and he said there was just a dark cloud.
Oh my
Oh my God, he said it
gosh.
was just so obvious there's something terribly wrong in this house. I've got to go now. And he said he
Whoa.
ran over there like a sprinter because he said as soon as she said the words, I looked at your house and I knew this is desperate.
Wow, that's
And he said
insane.
if you hadn't have hollered my name when I banged on that bathroom window, my next step was to throw a brick through a sliding glass door and come in that house.
Oh my gosh. Oh my
And I was
gosh.
able to talk to him about it, and I showed him the scar, and I said
Yeah.
that would have been much bigger, and I wouldn't have been able to show it to you,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you hadn't have come over when you did.
Wow. That's so incredible. That's so incredible. I don't have words.
Yeah, and and in learning about appreciating the good of people. Um, when we moved to this new house, I actually got my first real friends.
Wow.
It's two boys that lived in the house across the street and one up, and their dad and mom were very strict, like no TV in the house because you're to study. You know,
Mhm. Sure, sure.
when all of us had graduated high school, they got a TV for themselves. But as
Sure,
long as
sure.
there were kids at home, we're not having that. And there were chores that had to be done and stuff. It was a very structured house, completely different from what I grew up in.
Mhm.
And of course, I didn't have a dad that was allowed to talk to me either, you know
Yeah.
and I've always been complimented on my ability to put a good team together. Any of my employers have always been like, you're really a great team builder. And these boys' dad, who was very strict, and I remember being kind of scared of him as a kid.
Yeah.
um, we were playing, and he decided that the boys were going to have a work day, you know, and I
Mhm.
decided, well, I guess I got to go home. And he said, now hold on a minute. And he said, you play in this yard as much as they do. And we're going to take about an hour and make the yard a more beautiful place to be. And if you help, we'll get through faster. And I will remember that the boys would rather be playing. So he
Ah,
presented it in such a
yes.
way that it was like, you're either team boys or you're not, you know?
I
And
see,
and
I
it was
see.
like, and I was like, and I stayed, and I helped. And I still to this day, when I drive through the old neighborhood, I am so proud of that monkey grass on that driveway because I helped plant that. That's a part of my life, and I learned that lesson from a different, from somebody else's daddy,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know, and I saw his son, the one that is exactly my age, a few weeks ago, and I was telling him about, you know, saying, I really wish I could run into him to his dad, And my friend's wife, who I'd never met, was there, and she says, she looked at my friend and said, "Well, nobody's ever said that before, have they, honey?" You know? And I thought, isn't that cool that I no matter what kind of person he was, I got this incredible, great lesson from him, and I see it
Oh.
as a him having just enough extra daddy love to share with the boy across the street that wasn't getting any, you
Oh.
know,
Yes.
and he may be a completely different person in their eyes, but in my eyes, he's
Yes.
one of my heroes because I learned so much from him.
I love that. I'll quote Jared because Jared says that um it's like the part of growing up, right? First, you have all these like heroes, right? And then you realize a lot of your heroes are terrible people.
Yeah,
And you kill them, right? And that's part of growing up. And then the last part of growing up is realizing that terrible people can still be heroes. Like
yeah.
you don't have to be perfect to do some amazing things in
Mhm.
life. And that heroes um like you said, you just you don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
I just think that's so
And
beautiful.
my mom's a hero to a lot of people,
Right, right.
and
Yeah,
so and it's cool that she affected them that way.
it is. It is. And it's cool that you can appreciate that even with everything that happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn.
And like I say, she wasn't perfect and she didn't have an owner's manual. So, a lot of my pain just happened because, that was a part of what I had to experience that to become who I am, and I don't think I would not change who I am today for anything. So
That's
that means I can't
beautiful.
change anything in my past because it's my
Isn't that
past who brought me to
crazy?
here.
Exactly. That's like what I was saying where yeah, because ultimately this is me, and if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be me, and
Yeah.
I want to be here. I want to live my life, you know?
Yeah.
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 I have another thought
But
for the video. Oh, go ahead.
yeah.
You go first.
Well, the thing about when you get all this when you get yourself to a point where you can be forgiving,
Yeah.
it's almost like the weight of the world lifts off of your shoulders. You're
Yeah.
not carrying these burdens anymore because you've let them go. And that's the whole
Yes.
point of forgiveness, is to just let it go. Get over
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Forgiveness
to
is just a nicer way of saying that.
it really is. Yeah, it's I think societally we use forgiveness maybe like we need like a different word almost. Like maybe it's acceptance is more what
Yeah,
we're talking about. But I still
yeah,
think I like the word forgiveness as it relates to just not harboring resentment toward a person or yourself
yeah,
or even a group or a
yeah.
religion, yeah, yeah,
And there's been times through the years when, like, there would be, like, a youth group reunion, and I just wouldn't I'm not going, you know?
right.
But after I forgave the building and the situation, I've been in situations where I was at a birthday party for somebody, and, like, half the people I knew from the youth group were there, and my heart just when I walked in and saw this one girl that I hadn't seen in probably 35, 40 years, my heart
Yeah.
just leapt out of my chest. I had forgotten how
Oh,
imprinted she was on me, and that was so very cool to see
yes.
her and not have any kind of thing in the back of my head. I don't even know if I needed to forgive her. All I know is I love her, and before I
Oh
was
my
scared to go to
gosh.
anything like that because, how am I going to react? You
Right.
know?
What are people gonna say? What are people
And
gonna think?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's been times for reunions at the Baptist school I went to And I've always been like, I can't go to that for sure. You
Sure,
know, because
sure.
I have a lot of forgiveness in my heart, but there's a few people I don't know if I'd be able to allow them to leave there alive. You know?
Oh, right, right.
Because that pain's pretty damn deep, you know?
Of course, of course.
But I think I could now. I'm still not gonna put myself in that situation, you
Yeah,
know?
it's like no, it's just like it's about knowing yourself and what you need and
Yeah,
what would be good for you, right? Not
yeah,
cutting yourself off from love, but also not putting yourself needlessly in situations that you know are just not gonna help
yeah,
you.
yeah,
It's so easy. I think the whole acceptance and forgiveness piece of it is like, I think we really do cut ourselves off from a lot of love when we're harboring so much resentment. And this
yeah,
is something that really hit me in the video that we did together last time was toward the end we were talking about the religions we grew up in and we were talking about, kind of how far we've come and how we've gotten to a better place of love and admiration for the
yeah,
good aspects of it again.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I think it's a sign of healing to get to that point where you can say, to not just that anger isn't just blinding you from all of the good that happened still, you know?
yeah,
And I was thinking to myself, like, I feel that way towards Mormonism again. Like I feel this love and admiration and, like,
yeah,
I don't think it's true. I'm not gonna attend every week, but I
yeah.
have a love in it in my heart of this is where I grew up, and these are my people, and these are the scratchy walls, that I loved so much and that built me. These
Yeah,
scratchy
yeah,
Mormon walls built me, and I'm grateful, and it feels very peaceful.
yeah,
And I was thinking about that this week a lot as like I want to get to that point about my childhood, and
yeah,
about the things that happened and situations I was involved in. I want to get to that point where I can sit there and say like, yeah, these things were not good, but here's the good. I want to
yeah.
appreciate the good, and I
It
want to see these people through that lens. And,
yeah,
I'm feeling more hopeful that that's possible for me. And so I'm going to continue to aim on working on that and being patient with the process. Because again, it's a lot.
and from what you've shared about your story growing up, um, and I don't mean this to sound disrespectful at all, but it's kind of sounds to me like your mom and stepdad are Mormon holy rollers, if that's such a thing, you know?
Right, right.
It's like a little more
It
than normal, you know?
Very much so, honestly, yes. Like, I grew up with just it was very atypical, and it's something I haven't talked a lot about on the channel, but I do talk about it a lot on Patreon for those who don't know what you're referencing, because I
Yeah,
think some people might be confused by that, so just so people know, like, there are some videos out there that I just don't put on the public channel. Um, it is it's something that's hard to come back from, but
yeah,
all of us have that with our parents, I think. I don't know, I haven't met anyone yeah, I haven't met anyone that was just like, "Yeah, my parents are awesome, they didn't traumatize me in any kind of way whatsoever," you know?
yeah,
And, but ultimately, all most parents are trying to be good, and they're trying to do what they think is right, and they're trying to help their kids, and I think honestly, one of the biggest problems probably the so that that gets us into these situations is that most people just don't have good coping techniques. And when
yeah,
you don't know good coping techniques, you're going to hurt people to try to feel better. And it's not conscious.
yeah,
It's not like I'm going to go hurt this person so I feel better. It's like I'm hurting so much, my pain is spilling out all over everyone else because I don't know how to maintain it, you know?
yeah.
Yeah.
I know 2 people that grew up with incredible parents, and they are each cousins of mine.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause,
Wow.
and this is something that my brother and sister and I all agree on. We were blessed with the most incredible aunts on the
Oh,
planet.
Yeah.
It was my mother's sister's house where I learned how to really love. And it was at
Oh,
my dad's sister's house where I learned to be open and welcome everybody, because my
wow.
my dad's whole family is just very you it's like you belong in my house because you're my blood.
Yeah.
When I moved to California, um, my friend and I stayed in my aunt's house for probably 6 or 8 weeks until we found a place to live. And not
Wow.
everybody would do that. It,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
for
but
sure.
they do. And
Oh,
my cousin Jim was a very successful man. He died way too young. But I
yeah.
asked him one time what the key to his success was, and he said, "My mom said that I could be anything I wanted to be, and she doesn't lie."
Oh,
You know, and
man.
and I'm
That's
so lucky
so
to have had her
precious.
as an aunt, but how great would it have been to, you know?
Right, right. Yes, yeah. I really loved when I read, The Awakened Family. I don't know if you've heard of that book, but it's by Dr. Shafali. She, did an incredible job with that book, and it was life-changing for me, really helped me with a lot of the forgiveness stuff. One thing she talks about in that book that I think is so cool is how, once you're an adult, you are your own parent, and how you have to
Yeah,
learn to parent yourself lovingly to, tend to your needs and your wants and your issues, and how, when we have a parent or both parents didn't know how to take good care of us, then our we don't know how to take good care of us, right? That internal parent is usually reflective of the external parent you had.
yeah,
So, like, I feel like a big part of my journey has just been learning how to be a good parent to myself, as in how to take good loving care of myself, and how to change that internal voice from being negative over to being more loving, which that's hard. That's
yeah,
not an overnight thing, but I loved her perspective of, like, you gotta parent yourself. You gotta learn to be a good parent to you, because that's
yeah.
powerful.
One of my first therapists that I went to, uh, one time said, "The better half of what you're going through is all your mom's fault, but it's not her fault that it's her fault, because you're a completely
Oh,
different person from your brother, your sister, from her. You did not come with an owner's manual.
I see, I see.
So, yeah, your parents made mistakes because you're a completely different being than what they're used to dealing with. So,
Right.
what we have to do now is figure out a way to get over the mistakes they made."
Yes, and to not take it so personally,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because, like, we take it so personally, like, "Oh, my mom did this or didn't do this," and I make it mean so much about myself, and as a
yeah,
kid, I think you can't help it, but as an
and
adult, you can try to start to sort through that and be like, "Oh, maybe she did this and it didn't have anything to do with me."
yeah,
Yeah.
and you're almost elevating your parent to a godlike status because you're expecting, that you got hurt because you're expecting them to read your mind.
Or expecting them to
Or
be perfect, or
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So,
that's a really good point.
you're holding them up way too high, you know.
I really like that you said that, yeah, like, because and I think that's a very kind of a childish perspective, and
Yeah,
it's because when
yeah.
you're a kid, you do elevate them to God status because they know
Oh yeah,
everything and they make all the
yeah,
rules, and so I love that of, like, get your parent off that pedestal and realize that they're a human being and, like, just like you, and it might make it almost, like, hurt a little bit less, like, to be
yeah.
like, "Okay, they're just a person going through their life trying to figure it out." Yeah, I like that.
And when my dad had that apology moment with me, um, I think he had worked through something full circle in his head,
Yeah.
and was like, "I need to get this off my chest." I need to let this boy know how much I do love him. And you know, and there were several times in my life where he, you know, because mom got to run the house, you
Yeah.
know, she dad brought home the money and she gave him $50 a week, and that was to buy his gas to and from work and his lunch. You know,
Wow. Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
mom controlled the family.
Yes.
And dad would always say, everything we have is due to her. I would spend it all the day I got it.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Wow.
that's why we run this family this way, is we
I
would have
see.
nothing, you know.
I see. I see.
And and it was really beautiful to see how much he loved her in that moment,
Oh,
you know,
like
because
he
I mean,
appreciated her to
con
make up for his weaknesses.
yeah,
Yeah.
and also that he loved her so much
Yeah.
that we can just have an extra kid and it's all yours,
I see. I see what you're
you
saying.
know?
Right.
'Cause, and I think part of the reason that we had that moment together is because over the 20 years that I got to know him as a man,
Right. Right.
we became friends,
Yeah.
and that friend knew that he had wronged me, and that
Yes.
weighed heavy on his soul.
Wow.
And, you know, the day he said that was like, that it was either my birthday or the day before. Um,
Wow.
he held on. I mean, the man had been, you know, we had to push him everywhere he went. He had to wear oxygen 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And he held on until the 16th of January just not to fuck up my birthday. You know? You
Oh.
know?
Wow.
And I've always said that, you know, if he could give back the last year of his life, he would, because it was miserable.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
miserable as it was,
Yeah.
he had this conversation with me knowing it would be the last conversation he had with me, and he also knew he had to hold on for 3 more days and suffer 3
Wow.
more days, you know?
Wow.
And I wish I could have had that kind of a verbal moment with my mother.
That would have been so nice.
That would have been very nice, but I think that what I did was enough,
Oh, yes.
you know? Considering she was
Absolutely.
not able to communicate,
Yeah.
I did everything I could, and it worked. She died knowing that she had a baby that adored her.
Yeah. Yeah, she did. Wow. That is so beautiful. Oh, man. Thank you so much for being here for me, for talking about all this stuff. This has been just so special and so beautiful and so intimate. And I hope that other people um, can appreciate that fact that are watching this.
One of my proudest moments watching you, and this might be on the Patreon channel too, I don't know, but it was when you played
Yeah.
violin at your church.
Oh, that was so
When
cool. Yes.
and it was like the day the missionaries were going off or something, and I thought, "Look at that girl go. She is
Oh.
conquering this." You know?
Oh my
I was
gosh.
so proud of you. As a Mama Joe, I was so proud of you watching that video.
I love that you brought that up. I so appreciate your love for me and being proud of me because I was really proud of me too. So, for those who don't know, I started learning violin this year. It's been kind of a big deal because I'm very perfectionist, and so playing a new instrument, playing it in front of people, very scary. But I've just been having so much fun with it, and I think it's a great sign of how far I've come. And a couple gals that one of the gals I play with, she's Mormon, so she's like, "Hey, let's play at my church," and I was like, "All right, let's do it."
Let's go. Let's
And
do
it
this.
was
Yeah.
and it was funny. We just so happened to be playing on a day that it was a missionary farewell. There was two missionaries saying goodbye, and so I think, of course, a couple years ago that would have really wrecked me. But even though it was a little bit hard, I had a good time.
Yeah.
I liked playing for
A couple of
everyone.
years ago, you wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, that's true. That's no, you're absolutely right. It's not that it would have wrecked me. It's what I would have been like, hell no, like
Yeah.
I'm not stepping foot. And so it's really special to see how far I've come and to realize how much I've let go of and how hard I've worked to get to this point. And
Yeah.
I was talking to my therapist the other day and I was telling her, like, I'm really proud of myself. Like, I actually genuinely feel proud of myself in my life right now. And I don't know if I've ever felt that way before. And
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like I've worked really hard and I've come through so much. And when I say I'm proud of myself, like I'm proud of my growth personally and how I manage my stress and how I am open to criticism and I'm open to changing and I'm taking such good care of myself. That's what I'm referencing. And she said to me, she said, Morgan, people don't get this far without choosing it. So you
Yeah.
should be proud of yourself. And
Yeah.
that was really cool to hear. I was like, she's
Yeah.
right. Like, it's not like I accidentally stumbled into all of this improvement. It's that I chose it. And
Yeah.
and it um feels nice to feel like I can more accurately see the benefits
Yeah.
of being on this road because I think for so long I was like I felt like I was spinning in my own mess and I was like I don't know if this is even helping. But it's hard to see it when you're in it, when you can
Yeah.
look at it from the outside and see it years and years down the road. All of a sudden you're like, wow, no, this is making a massive difference for
Yeah.
me and for my kids and for my friends. And so thank you. Thank you. Closing thoughts. Any closing thoughts before I
Oh my
cry
gosh.
more?
Um, just, I think the lessons that I've learned in the last 5 to 10 years have been to just, you just got to let go.
Yeah.
Everything you're hanging on to is what's holding you back. The unforgiveness is an anchor dragging behind you. And once you let go of that, you really start propelling forward. You got to cut that anchor off.
That was so well said. I didn't want to interrupt because it was such a beautiful metaphor. Oh, that was so good. That was so good. I think yeah, I think I will just end with saying I am very grateful to myself that I didn't give up on me and didn't give
Yes.
up on a better future because I
Yeah.
think for a long time I was like, I'm so fucked up, like there's just no chance. There's no
Yeah.
there's no getting better and I'm so glad that I didn't stay there, you know,
Yeah. And all,
inevitably.
and in all the years that I spent in drugs and alcohol, um, I tell people now, I didn't expect to see the year 2000,
Oh, wow.
because I was partying. I was staying numb so I didn't have to deal with anything,
Of course. Yeah.
you know. Like I say, in all those years, I didn't expect to live to be as old as I am. I really expected to party myself to death and die with my hate.
Oh my god. Yeah.
And believe me, I'm 58 years old. I'm still a renter. you know. I have fucked up my life from here to East Jesus, Kansas with my
Mhm.
hatred and hanging on to shit, you know. I will
Yeah.
probably work till the day I die because if I had planned on living this long, I would have planned a hell of a lot better.
Right, right.
And and now that I'm here in this moment, I'm so grateful for it.
Oh,
I'm you know, now I feel like if I died tomorrow, that'd be just fine because I feel like
yeah.
I've resolved so much
That's
and
so
and
beautiful.
come so far
Yeah.
and I don't and you know I beat alcohol.
Yes.
I beat cocaine. I beat methamphetamine.
Wow.
That's all my strength,
Yeah.
you know. No higher power helped me with that. That was my problem with AA. Was I'm like, nope,
Yes.
not going to do that. Need to find a
Yes.
different program, and I couldn't find a program that didn't want me to give it up to a higher power. So I had to do it myself. I made a decision to do it, and I stuck to it, and that's my strength.
Oh my
And
God,
now
that's
here I
incredible.
am. You know.
That is so incredible. I love that. And I'm so grateful that you're here because you have impacted my story so much. So thank you for being here. Thank you for
Thank you
sharing
for
your
having me.
story, for being so raw and vulnerable and honest and inspiring me to do the same. And I I'm so grateful. I was nervous getting into this video. You know, I was like, "Wait, we can't start. I got to get my box of tissues." And
Yeah.
I was nervous, but this was this was really special. And I'm really
Yeah,
glad that we that we did this.
I am too.
Woo! All right. If you got this far into the video as you're watching, please hit the like button.
Smash it.
Like it if you're holding on to resentment, right? Because we all are.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
yeah. And figure out a
Oh,
way to move on, you know.
oh man. Yes, sending everyone that's watching this my hugs. Thank you, Mama Joe, and
Thank you.
hopefully we'll have you around again
Oh
sometime
yeah,
because you seem to
I'm sure
bring out
something will
the
come up.
you seem to bring out the best in me. Or the worst, I can't tell. Either way, it's
Either way,
forward progress.
it makes for good videos either way.
Okay, well, thank you guys again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.